Hey everyone! In today's video, I am going to tell you what are the best settings for portrait photography. Welcome to ManualModePhotography.com. On this channel, we discuss all about photography lessons, tips, and ideas for photography, camera reviews, lenses reviews, and lot more. In today's video, we will discuss about best settings for portrait photography. Before we dive in, you will have to understand your camera settings and how each one of them affects your image. These are the pillars of the photography: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Aperture. Aperture is the opening in your lens that allows light to pass through. The larger the hole, the more light travels through it. The smaller that opening, less light will pass through a darker image as a result. Much similar to a human eye that opens its pupils in the dark to capture light, stretching the pupil when looking directly at the sun. How does aperture affect my photos? Aperture controls how bright and dark your images will be. The more you open the diaphragm of your lens, the more light comes in, thus a more brilliant picture in the end. The more you close it, less light comes in, and thus a darker image in the end. It also controls your depth of field. When you are on the large side of your lens's diaphragm, that will separate your subject from their background, achieving a shallow depth of field, also known as the bokeh effect. But if you are on the small side of your diaphragm, you will have the entire subject and its background in focus. Example of shallow depth of field. This is an image taken at f1.4. Shutter speed. If aperture controls how much light enters your sensor, shutter speed controls for how long. It is a small door that slams shut right after taking the picture. Aside from that, faster speeds will allow you to freeze fast-moving objects, even a water droplet or a fast car. Slower speeds will help you capture more light in your photos if a large aperture isn't sufficient. How does shutter speed affect my photos? Shutter speeds represented by fractions of a second or even by full seconds, which will have a different impact on your final product. Faster speeds will freeze fast-moving subjects, but there's a trade-off, as the amount of light it will capture is limited. That is fine if you take sports photography outside where there's plenty of sunlight. However, if you are in a poorly lit environment, that will cause your pictures to be underexposed. If you take a picture at 1:60 in a moderately lit indoor space, you might be able to take a sharp picture depending on your aperture settings and lens quality. But on the flip side of that, you might introduce some motion blur and camera shake into your pictures. The sacrifice here is quality. The solution here would be to either increase your ISO or use an external light source such as a strobe light or flash. An example of how a fast shutter speed will freeze objects, water, everything. Slower shutter speeds will increase motion blur to your image. ISO. ISO is another ingredient to cook a perfect image, but be careful as it can ruin your pictures just as well. By increasing its number, you will be adding brightness to your photo digitally. That means, if you are unable to find the correct exposure by only using aperture and shutter speed, you will be obliged to add brightness manually by increasing ISO. How does ISO affect my pictures? ISO digitally adds light into your picture. That being said, when you can't get a nice sharp image with the lighting scenario you're at, you can crank a little bit of ISO to balance it out, so the exposure comes out correct. But bear in mind that you're trying to use as little of ISO as possible. If you do it too much, your images will look grainy and unprofessional. Thanks for watching our video. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Comment if you have any feedback or query, and hit the bell icon for regular notifications.